Hello and welcome to Glitchy Switch, the podcast all about what it feels like discovering you have ADHD as an adult. My name is Martin and I believe that no one deserves to live in shame in a world not designed for them. So in each episode, I'll pick off the kind of questions that go through your mind on the journey from curiosity to diagnosis. Whether you're on your own journey or supporting someone who is, I hope my own experiences might just help you. I know what it's like to have a busy life and a busy mind, so each episode lasts about as long as a cup of coffee so you can easily fit it in and enjoy without draining too much energy. Today's question is one I suspect probably quite a few ADHD people wrestle with, particularly those recently diagnosed, and actually tackling it now was prompted by another one of your messages. We're talking about the influence of the media coverage on life as an ADHD person. The question you asked was actually coming from the perspective of finding it hard to explain ADHD to a spouse. And when I sat down to unpack that, because I do think ahead, I came to the conclusion that what people hear and read about it is big enough for a question in and of itself. I've not forgotten the original question. I just think relationships and ADHD are a good one for us to get into another day. I think, or I hope, that today we can at least start to put down a bit of a platform that we can maybe build on for that discussion later. I think there's a few things going on here, and some of them relate to simple understanding and others relate to the commentary about ADHD in general and in society. We've talked a little bit about the general chatter about ADHD before when we talked about what not to say to ADHD people the other week. Speaking as a 40-something man, I can see how we talk way more about mental health in general and kind of feelings in general, much more than at any time I can remember. To me, it's obvious that this is a good thing because the more talking about feelings and emotions is normalised, hopefully the less people will bottle things up and their problems just get bigger. ADHD in particular has become increasingly talked about in the media, and there's more than a few celebrities, at least in the UK, now talking about their diagnoses or their suspicions that they might be ADHD people. Again, in the round, you'd say that this is a good thing because you'd hope that us ADHD people feel a bit more comfortable and less ashamed about it, and so will our families. But there is, as you can probably tell, a bit of a but coming. The first thing is that for all ADHD still isn't well understood from, I guess, a medical perspective. I've noticed people start to comment about the frequency they're hearing about it to the extent where it's making them skeptical about whether it's really a thing at all. You'll remember I mentioned a few episodes ago how frustrating it is. You get people say, oh, I think everyone's a bit ADHD. And this is basically the logical outcome of the increase of what I would see as quite shallow coverage, combined with a lack of general understanding in the first place about the condition. People see the headlines and they click the clickbait, and often the articles are a few short paragraphs with like a soundbite thrown in from a celebrity or whoever it is about themselves, without ever really unpacking their experience of ADHD in sort of detail or level setting on what it means. Now, of course, part of the problem is that short, punchy articles don't have space for that. So I'm not convinced this is completely deliberate, but it does sort of create this two-edged sword that on the one hand, ADHD is becoming normalised as a topic, but on the other, because it seems like everyone, and I'm kind of doing that air quotes thing now, has it, there's perhaps a natural disbelief that it's actually real. The celebrity looks and sounds so normal, air quotes thing again, that the pursuit of media attention in and of itself has become a profession with influencers and so on. So you can understand how people grow increasingly cynical about what they hear. And it's basically a cocktail of lack of understanding and overexposure, I suppose you'd call it. I think I mentioned when I talked about my diagnosis, there'd been a documentary on here in the UK about potentially sort of iffy ADHD clinics charging big fees and then not diagnosing people correctly and prescribing meds on an ongoing basis and charging for it and all of that kind of stuff. Though it's clearly something that needs to be covered, and I'm glad it is, I found it actually made me really defensive, especially when a friend's initial reaction when I told them my news was, oh, is it from one of those clinics on Panorama, one of the dodgy runs? I was genuinely really, really upset one, that they hadn't sensed how big a deal this was for me, but also that they take what I felt was quite a judgmental attitude without even really inquiring what it was all about. You know, it's quite a sweeping statement for someone to make about something off the back of, it seemed like, not really very much knowledge. What also doesn't help, talking of knowledge, is that for some of us of a certain age, we can remember when ADHD first started to become a term that was used, and it was often used to describe hyperactive children who had just been considered naughty, those air quotes again. Now, some of us take that as a breakthrough and are pleased there's a focus and some help for parents and children in the recognition. But you get other, I don't know, let's call it reactionary people. You know the types, and probably some of the newspapers they read. I've heard those sort of people sort of say, oh, well, you know, this is just an excuse for badly behaved kids and bad parenting and all of that. And as well as insulting parents and their ADHD children, I think that kind of throws shade on all of us, because those perceptions stick. And you often find that when people are so forthright with an opinion, it's almost like the emotional hurdle of climbing down from that position, if they've been vocal about it, is so great that they just kind of, you know, double down on the flawed belief. And I think the media coverage, as we've talked about right now, sort of doesn't help that. It just kind of reinforces it, that lack of depth. And all of this noise creates a hurdle for us as well to get over. And it's just so tiring. I find it so tiring. Because from the get-go, we're put in a position of having to justify ourselves. And that's before you get onto things like social media, comments on articles, Facebook posts, and all of that, which sometimes only amplify that even further. As a final thing, and I've noticed this, and to be honest with you, I worry about it quite a lot, is that off the back of that sort of general increase in awareness of the term, that of course means that your broadcasters and commentators and bloggers and podcast hosts and even politicians have seen a bit of an opportunity for eyeballs and ratings and streams and sound bites and all of that kind of stuff. And it's a function, I think, of the age that we live in this desire of creating viral content. I remember reading once that for things to go viral, they either need to trigger awe or anger about something. And it's not hard to see that for some people, giving people's natural cynicism a bit of a poke and coming up with, you know, the next divisive topic might be a sort of grift that you might see some people try to exploit, given some of the personalities that seem to make a living out of this. And that worries me. You know, I've seen it once or twice already, and I sort of think, actually, it really quite stings to find yourself, you know, like a football that people are using for some other reason. But I'm trying not to get too bent out of shape about it now, but it does kind of bother me. But what I would say, that's why we need each other. And he said, looking to end on a high and talk things round, why we're now talking, of course. And I have to say, we're it's about 8 or 9 weeks into these chats. And I just absolutely love doing this. I love spending time talking to you, and I've so appreciated your kindness that you've sent me back. It's so good. I'm just so glad we started. Anyway, next time, because it's better to light a candle than complain about the dark, I think we're going to do something on what we can do to educate people. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. You can get in touch via glitchyswitchpodcast@gmail.com with your thoughts and suggestions of things you'd like to hear about. You can also follow me on @glitchyswitchpodcast on Instagram for more on ADHD life and to find out what's coming next.